This week abroad. A new energy player emerges as Guyana strikes billion-dollar oil find. More details emerge about a Donald Trump-Vladimir Putin secret meeting.
Should clarify in the next session.
EU officials call for clarification as tough Brexit talks get underway. Welcome to This Week Abroad. I'm Andrew Laidley. Let's start with some of the major business news stories from across the region. Leading trade unions in Barbados have welcomed the news that Prime Minister Frondell Stewart has agreed to meet with them over austerity measures imposed by the government. The measures were introduced a few weeks ago. However, the unions have pushed back on some of the measures, especially an increase in the National Social Responsibility Levy. They have even started industrial action to get the government's attention.
A meeting of August the 18th, yes, was proposed, and the unions are of the view that, well, a meeting at any time may be suitable given the urgency of the situation, given the pressing circumstances confronting our country, yes, but our people who are unable to cope with the measures that have been instituted, that there needs to be more urgent and definite action being taken to make sure that we can get out of the hole we are in a manner that everybody can commit to working towards getting out of that hole.
In the meantime, Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc. Chairman Alvin Gemot is warning the trade unions not to bite the hand that feeds them, as the disruption is hurting the tourism sector.
Everyone in this country agrees that tourism is what's fueling our success right now. And my simple message would be, never cut the branch on which you're standing. And if tourism is what is driving our economy and it's what's keeping us as a people doing reasonably well, we should do nothing to interrupt the tourism industry. Anytime that there's any type of disruption to the natural tourism business flow, it is concerning for us in the tourism industry. But again, I would ask and urge people to understand what's really feeding them. Never take food off your own table.
In Trinidad, staff cuts could be coming soon for some workers at the state-owned company Petrotrin. This after both the Oil Fields Workers Trade Union, OWTU, and the Ministry of Energy and Energy Affairs agreed that the company should be restructured.
Well, no, they agreed with, he said in somewhat, they agreed with our position, which was accepted by the committee, to restructure the company into 3 divisions generally. And no amount of sidestepping that arrangement will really benefit Petrotrin.
OWTU President Ansel Roger is calling for staff cuts, especially in the departments which don't deal directly with oil production and refinery.
In all of the areas where you extract oil and you send it to the refinery to produce the product, there are vacancies. But in areas like corporate communications and HR where they don't produce anything, they are highly overstaffed. And our focus is to immediately restructure the company, putting the focus on and the emphasis on where it matters.
At the same time, Mr. Roger says there are vacancies within the oil-producing and refinery areas of the company, but he argues that the finance minister does not want to employ people. This, he says, is bad for the company's growth.
I think we learned here today is that the hole that they put on those vacancies, there's a current hole right now on the filling of vacancies. And we were told that that came from the Ministry of Energy. But we were told today that no, it didn't come from the Ministry of Energy. Our suspicion is that it came from that short fellow, the Minister of Finance, who want to send everybody home and who is preventing the filling of those vacancies. So could you imagine that? He wants the company to get revenue, but he do not want the company to employ people to win oil, to make products, to sell, to get the revenue.
In southern St. Lucia, some citizens are cautious of a big development project which could make or break them. The Viewfort Concerned Citizens for Change held a town hall meeting to voice their concerns on the development.
And it might surprise you for me to tell you that I am not against this development. I am against the development in its current form. That's what I'm against. That's what I'm against. You know, because if it was fair and equitable, If we would reap the benefits without having to shoulder all the responsibilities for failure, I would not be here. I would be too happy to know that we have a $3 billion project coming on stream. But no, this country of ours, where our debt to GDP is almost at 95%, where every dollar we make, we owe 95 cents on the dollar or thereabout. We are about embarking upon a project that might sink us financially and take us to the jaws of the IMF. To that, we must together say no. And that's why I'm here. And I have no personal interest in this. I don't. I have no political interest. I have no personal interest. There is nothing I need that the Almighty God has not blessed me with. All I ask Him for a bit longer life to ensure that the injustices St. Lucia receives at the hands of unscrupulous politicians, those injustices are stopped.
The Desert Star Holdings DSH development project involves about 700 acres of land. Prime Minister Alan Chastany and Chairman of DSH Teo Ah King have already signed an agreement which paves the way for a $2.6 billion development. The Viewfort development project will include a marina, racecourse, resort and shopping mall complex, casino, free trade zone, entertainment and leisure facilities, and over 1,500 architecturally designed villas and apartments. The project is being called the Pearl of the Caribbean. Up next, ExxonMobil invests billions in Guyana's newfound oil repository. A special interview is after the break. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to This Week Abroad. By 2020, Guyana is expected to export its first barrel of oil from the Stabroek Block. The country joins Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela as a potential major energy player in the Western Hemisphere. And if things go as planned, daily output from the Stabroek Block could reach 450,000 barrels by mid-2020. This week abroad, we speak with CEO of Guyana's Oil and Gas Association, Bobby Gassai. Hello, Mr. Gassai, and welcome to the show. What does this oil find mean for the Guyanese economy?
It's an overwhelming feeling if you're living in Guyana and you first hear about a discovery of that nature. It's an overwhelming feeling from a public sector point of view because of policies and legislations and mechanisms that will be put in place to ensure that the country garners the full benefit of that new resource that it has found. From the private sector and from individuals who are working in the business and investment arena, it provides an avenue for new opportunities that can be established here. So for Guyanese of all sectors, of all class and creed and groups, it's a moment where you know that something important has happened to your country and you want to be a part of it, whether it's part of the supply side of it or part of the production side of it, or even if you're involved in policy or any part of it, it's something that you want to be part of it. Because as with other resources which Guyana have, Guyana does not only have oil. We have been working for a number of years, for decades, on our traditional natural resources which we have, which includes timber, gold, diamond, bauxite, sand and stone, loam. We do have manganese and other rare earth elements and such. And for quite over a decade, gold has been the #1 earner of foreign exchange for our country and has helped propel our economy into a stable state during the world financial crisis and even the food crisis during the period of 2008 to about 2010, 2011. So we have been a country that is resource rich, but we are working to be resource wealthy in order to ensure that we garner the full revenues from those resources and manage it properly. So I would say that we look at the oil sector because the oil sector is different from any other sector. It's a fast-moving sector, and financial resources are more applicable to the realities of your country during that period of time that you have that resource.
Now, I know the government of Guyana had pledged to build a $500 million processing and servicing center. Where are they on fulfilling that commitment, and what is the private sector doing to get in on the business prospects of the oil and gas industry in Guyana?
All right, well, they have not made an investment as yet. There's a proposal for an investment in the Crab Island facility, which is going to be an onshore supply base that will service the offshore sector. So it is a proposal for an investment to start a new facility that will allow for the full activities of servicing all the offshore operation from the central location. And what has been happening right now is in November of last year, the government invited expression of interest, and there were several companies, both from within Guyana and outside of Guyana, that submitted their proposals to see if they could be part of that equation. And what is happening right now is the private sector here in Guyana is very much interested to see what level that they can play in the development of Crab Island, and also to see where they can provide services to offshore operations and build on new experiences that they will gain.
Now, the reports are that Guyana should be exporting barrels of oil by 2020. How realistic is that?
No, it's just to let you know that, we're happy to carry the message across of this new oil find in Guyana, and to know that the interest is there. And Guyana, is a country that builds on partnership. So for experiences and knowledge that we do not have here, we're also trying to learn at the same time. It's a steep learning curve for Guyana in the oil and gas sector, but hopefully by 2020 we can be able to manage it in a sustainable way.
Well, thanks for speaking with me here on This Week Abroad.
Sure, no problem. Thank you.
Weather could be a major factor in the prices of corn, crude oil, and natural gas in the coming weeks. Two tropical disturbances in the Atlantic are expected to impact these commodity prices. Meanwhile, with an active hurricane season expected, investors are wondering just how successful the crop season will be, because crop ratings are not as great as expected. In the same breath, the corn market is indicating that temperature and rain during July will be critical to future downgrades expected in crop and yield reports. When we come back, Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin cozy up before G20 dinner. The international stories are on the next side of this break. Stay with us. Welcome back to This Week Abroad. A White House official has confirmed that U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin had a previously undisclosed conversation during a dinner for G20 leaders at a summit earlier this month in Germany. The conversation is raising new questions about ties between Russia and the Trump administration. Heidi Zhu Castro reports from Washington, D.C.
Thank you.
Hours after the formal G20 meeting between Trump and Putin, the two leaders continued the conversation at a dinner hosted by German Chancellor Angela Merkel. All G20 leaders, their spouses, and interpreters were in attendance. But according to the president of the political risk consultancy Eurasia Group, two attendees told him the guests were startled to see Trump and Putin speaking for nearly an hour.
Never in my life as a political scientist have I seen two countries, major countries, with a constellation of national interests that are as dissonant, while the two leaders seem to be doing everything possible to make nice and be close to each other. Like that's what people don't understand.
The White House says the contact was just a brief conversation and not a second meeting. Trump on Twitter attacked the media, saying the fake news is becoming more and more dishonest. Even a dinner arranged for top 20 leaders in Germany is made to look sinister. But the relationship between Trump and Putin has been under scrutiny since U.S. intelligence determined Moscow attempted to influence the U.S. election in Trump's favor. At the on-the-record G20 meeting, Putin denied the accusation, and the two leaders agreed to move beyond the dispute.
We had a good meeting. It was a face-to-face meeting. It was a long meeting. It was 2 hours and 15 minutes. Everyone was surprised by the amount of time.
In the same interview, which Trump gave last week, he made no mention of additional contact with Putin.
Was he prepared if Putin, for example, brought up the ceasefire in Syria, where they would draw the lines, how they would deal with the Iranians and the Turks? Those are issues that he basically may not have been prepared to discuss and may have told Putin, who is always very well prepared, things that it'll be difficult for us to follow up on.
Meanwhile, U.S. investigators are digging deeper into a 2016 meeting between Trump's son and several Russians, including a former counterintelligence officer. Trump's son attended the meeting because he says he was promised the Russian government had information that would help his father win the election.
What do the Russians have politically, financially, and any personally on Donald Trump that he fawns over Putin?
Trump Jr.'s meeting, like the president's dinner encounter with Putin, was only confirmed after media reports. Critics say it adds to the cloud of suspicion surrounding Trump, his family, and Russia. Heidi Jo Castro, Al Jazeera, Washington.
In South Africa, land is a key issue ahead of the ruling party's national conference in December. The African National Congress is proposing that land expropriation without compensation should be allowed where necessary and unavoidable. Al Jazeera's Haru Mutasa reports from South Africa.
Klenyan Hasikoma applied to rent land from the government 10 years ago under the Land Redistribution Program. He is one of a few black commercial farmers in a country where whites still own most of the land. He recently became the first black man to win the Cattle Farmer of the Year competition. Making the transition from communal to commercial farming hasn't been easy, he says, and he knows of other black people who failed to make their farms profitable.
Land reform is good, but we should be careful. It has happened sometimes. We do not want a situation where our country runs out of food because farmers are not producing enough.
Hasikoma knew if he was going to succeed, he needed help. So he contacted Soy Harman, one of several farmers teaching new black farmers how to apply for a loan and run their farms as businesses. Starting off with 2 cows, now he has 200.
So it was very important to me to guide them so that they can start doing everything themselves. So what you see here, this kraal, was built by them.
Land ownership is an emotive issue in South Africa. Farmers say they know mentoring won't suddenly change attitudes, but it may help ease racial tensions as the land reform debate gains momentum. The African Farmers Association says there are at least 6,000 black commercial farmers compared to about 40,000 whites. Leaders of the African National Congress say that's a huge difference and land reform isn't happening fast enough. The ruling party says the willing buyer, willing seller scheme to redistribute land isn't working. That's why some ANC members are proposing land expropriation without compensation when necessary and unavoidable. They insist violent land grabs seen in neighboring Zimbabwe won't happen in South Africa. Not everyone agrees.
It's extremely reckless to engage in this kind of rhetoric at this stage in our economic development. I mean, let the economy grow before we even discuss redistribution, because at this stage, if we're going to pursue equality in this manner, we're all going to end up equally poor.
The poor are angry at the slow pace of transformation. It's been more than 20 years since white minority rule ended. Until South Africa addresses the land problem, Klenyan Hasikoma says he'll try and mentor as many black farmers as he can. His small way of trying to balance out South Africa's commercial farming landscape. Haru Mutasa, Al Jazeera, Revilu, South Africa.
After the first full round of negotiation in Brussels, the EU's chief Brexit negotiator is asking the UK to clarify several issues. David Doyle reports.
Sera donc de clarifier that the UK should clarify in the next session une clarification de la position du Royaume-Uni.
No doubting what the EU's chief Brexit negotiator wants from the UK. Michel Barnier repeatedly asking for clarifications from London at the end of the first full round of Brexit negotiations.
Le troisième round doit être celui de la clarification et nous avons besoin.
We require this clarification on the financial settlement, on citizens' rights, on Ireland with the 2 key points of the Common Travel Area and the Good Friday Agreement, and on the other separation issues.
Sujet de la séparation.
Expats' rights, Britain's divorce bill and the Irish border, the 3 key issues the EU says need to be addressed before it is willing to begin talks on a future trade deal. That just days after this picture, the EU team with reams of paper, the UK team without, sparked jibes from Brexit critics. They said the picture shows the UK's government is underprepared for the negotiations. Brexit Minister David Davis denying that Thursday, saying he had 98 officials working on the talks in Brussels.
All in all, the second round of negotiations has given us a lot to be positive about. And they've also highlighted the need for both sides to demonstrate a dynamic and flexible approach in the way we approach these challenges.
The EU not sounding flexible on the way in which the rights of its citizens living in the UK will be guaranteed. Barnier saying there was a fundamental divergence on the issue and insisted that the European Court of Justice should be the guarantor of those rights. Davis said both the UK and the EU agree on the need to ensure certainty for citizens.
We obviously have different views on how we achieve that.
Areas of disagreement identified as the priority in the next round of talks, those due to take place in late August. Barnier, concluding his opening remarks on Thursday, said that round must be about clarification.
That's it for This Week Abroad. Thanks for joining us. We're back next week with more regional and international stories. But remember to catch BATV News weekdays at 7:30 p.m. I'm Andrew Laidley. Pleasant viewing.